UFC 323 just wrapped up, and what a wild card to end the year of pay-per-views. Even with the disappointing co-main event, this event delivered drama, chaos, surprises, heartbreak, and legacy-altering moments. This is the final UFC pay-per-view under ESPN before the move to Paramount, and we ended this era with two new champions. And surprisingly, both Merab Dvalishvili and Alexandre Pantoja lost their belts, just not in ways anyone predicted. Let's recap everything top to bottom, starting with the main event. Petr Yan gets his revenge, a decisive, unanimous decision win, restoring order to the division and erasing the chaos that started years ago with that knee on Aljamain Sterling. It took 3 years for the timeline to be cleansed, but Yan looked like vintage no mercy version everyone feared. Yan's pressure, his healthy body, and his dialed in striking completely flipped the script of the first fight. Merab's takedowns, usually his greatest weapons, were obvious, slower, and far easier for Yan to read. And once Merab couldn't impose the wrestling, he became stuck reacting. Yan's rage probes were perfect, and from the third round onward, those counter body kicks were brutal, and every single one of them made a reaction from Merab, the worst poker face of all time. Yan even out-wrestled him in spots, scoring 3 to 4 takedowns and stuffing nearly 20. Yan landed over 50% of his strikes. Merab barely hit the mid-30s. Yan stunned him in round 1 with a clean 1-2, ripped the body, and even spiked Merab on his head with a massive slam and almost ended things. And yet, Merab never stopped. Cut up, banged up, hurting everywhere, but never fading. His cardio is his superpower. Everybody knows that. And right now, it's the one major advantage he still holds. But Yan proved something more important. The injury from the first fight was absolutely real. Yan barely threw his right hand in the first fight, but in this rematch, bruh, his right hand was a sniper rifle. This was classic Yan, getting sharper each round, adjusting, landing the overhand right, the intercepting kicks, the counters, and mixing in takedowns. It was a beautiful performance. We're heading into a trilogy now, at least I hope so. And it might go down as one of the greatest bantamweight trilogy ever. Merab was a dominant champion. Yan is back in peak form. And this third fight is going to be razor close in my opinion. Side note, DC somehow scored the first 2 rounds for Merab, which made no sense. Thankfully, the judges corrected course. Trilogy incoming. Now, with the co-main event, Joshua Vaughn becomes the new flyweight champion with a TKO win, but 26 seconds into the round due to a freak injury. And let's be honest, this is the definition of a fluke, alright? A couple early exchanges, Pantoja throws a head kick, Vaughn blocks it with his shoulder, Pantoja stumbles backwards, posts his arm to break in the fall. And that's where the injury happens. Right over. Vaughn technically caused the injury the way Chris Weidman did to Anderson Silva or Woodley did to Carlos Condit, but as fans, you can't help but feel a little dissatisfied, because if this is the end of Pantoja's prime, then we just lost one of the greatest flyweights ever in the most anticlimactic way possible. He becomes almost a mythical fighter at this point, someone nobody really beat at his best. Vaughn will likely defend next against Tatsuro Taira, and that's a dangerous matchup. Taira is bigger, stronger, and his grappling has skyrocketed. He literally dominated Brandon Moreno on the mat, something almost nobody does. I expect the flyweight belt to bounce around for a while, and I'm not sure when Pantoja is going to return. No dominant reign anytime soon though. Pantoja would get a title shot when he returns for sure, but the big question is, will he ever be the same? Because that injury looked pretty bad. And speaking of Tatsuro Taira, Taira becomes the first ever to finish Brandon Moreno, stopping him in round 2. Yes, the stoppage was a bit early in my opinion. I mean, he obviously was, but realistically, Moreno wasn't getting out of that position. Taira tripped him into a full mount, instantly transitioned to the back, locked the figure 4, rotated on top, and unleashed heavy ground and pound. Moreno was moving, but not actually escaping Taira. Taira was just too big, too strong, and too clean with his grappling. This performance guarantees Taira a title shot next. Nobody else in the division has a win like this. Now, for matchmaking, I would say Taira versus Van for the belt. Hiraguchi should fight the winner between Royval and Mokaev if he returns. Moreno should face the loser of that fight. The future of the division is going to be wild for sure. Payton Talbott versus Henry Cejudo. Payton Talbott defeats Henry Cejudo by unanimous decision and becomes the only fighter in UFC history to win every round against Cejudo. Talbott out-wrestled an Olympic gold medalist early, landing that inside trip and celebrating like a kid who just beat his hero in a video game. And honestly speaking, that was an achievement, especially coming off someone who was dominated in the wrestling by Barcelos. The guy has massively improved. He got overzealous and got reversed though. But even then, he was smiling, having fun, landing brutal knees, and would have knocked out anyone else. Cejudo has a good chin, man. He dropped Cejudo with a nasty right hook in round 2, and then outstruck him in the final exchange. Cejudo's last dance in MMA, and it was actually a very good one. Cejudo trusted Talbott enough to stand in the pocket for a final 10-second showdown, but Talbott overwhelmed him and even attempted a spinning heel kick to end the fight with style. Yes, Cejudo is definitely past his prime. He has had one foot out the door for a while now, but Talbott's growth is undeniable. He is no longer the version that lost to Barcelos. This guy is a future title contender, and I love the matchup with Chito Vera next, and I think he's going to destroy Chito Vera. Talbott probably is going to win that fight, and I see Talbott fighting for a belt by the end of 2026. As for Henry Cejudo, he had a very good highlight for his retirement, and it was actually a good way to go out of the sport. Błachowicz and Guskov fight to a majority draw, and honestly, it was perfect. Round 1 belonged to Yan, heavy leg kicks, stiff jabs, and he kept making Guskov go cross-eyed with those shots. Round 2 belonged to Guskov for sure. He dropped Yan with a clean right straight after Yan made a big technical mistake aligning out, then controlled him with elbows from top. Round 3 was classic Yan Hart, veteran, power jabs, chopping leg kicks, and then dropping Guskov at the end of the round with a beautiful combination, starting with a long left body hook. 2 judges scored it 28-28. One gave it to Yan, and in majority draw mat, the draw prevails. I think they should run it back. That was a close but competitive fight. Manuel Torres knocks out Dawson in round 1 with the first meaningful head strike he landed. Devastating finish and a massive statement win for Torres. And I always said it, if Bobby Green can do something like that to Dawson, what's Torres gonna do? Even though I did pick Dawson to win, because I thought he would go in, wrestle heavy, and make it a boring fight, which he normally does, but Torres shut it down. And I did say that was going to be a likely outcome as well. And then the prelims was amazing as well. The prelims was pretty good. Terrence Mckinney versus Chris Duncan, amazing fight. Terrence Mckinney almost finishing Chris Duncan, wild fight, but of course his chin fails again. Duncan lands a clean shot, drops Terrence, and eventually submits him. Mason Barber versus Karen Silva was a fun fight as well. Macy, with her greediness and experience, defeating Karen Silva. She got wobbled after an illegal kick to the ground, but she came back strong and really angry, and she did put on a good performance. Nazim Sadykhov versus Ziam was an amazing fight, with Ziam showing he keeps evolving. This man destroyed Nazim on the feet and on the ground, eventually landing a nice KO in round 2. Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira was a fun one as well. Had a bit of a slow start, but it really did pick up. Ferreira is a problem at middleweight, man, and I think Vettori is reaching the end of his career pretty much. I don't see how he's gonna be able to even beat any person who's a good prospect in the division, so I'm curious on where his career goes from here. Edison Barboza versus Jalen Turner was a fun fight while it lasted. Jalen Turner having a nice comeback, landing a knockout in round 2 after pretty much breaking down Barboza. Barboza needs to retire, man, honestly speaking. And then Iwo Baranowski versus Ibo Aslan, one of the craziest fights I have ever seen. Aslan almost taking Iwo out, but then Iwo coming back. Both guys kept dropping each other, but then Iwo lands a nice knockout to finish it. Mansour Abdul-Malik versus Antonio Trocoli. Abdul-Malik looking evolved, The man has hands, man, and he's really well-rounded. As for Trocoli, I think this guy's gonna get cut. He's not been looking good since he joined the UFC, and I just don't think his UFC caliber. Maimov versus Marion Santos. Santos coming in with a nice performance, looking well-rounded as well, looking clean, and ending a nice knockout. I'm very curious to see how this guy propels in his career, and I do think he has a lot of potential. UFC 323 closes out the ESPN era with shockwaves, 2 new champions, a revived Petr Yan, a heartbreaking injury, the emergence of Tatsuro Taira and Payton Talbott, and a chaotic light heavyweight war. 2026 is going to be insane, man. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video if you like the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.